first NHL 24 game patch has been released with 1.1. In this video, we're going to go through all of the patch notes, and I'll give you guys my personal feedback after playing all the way throughout the early access. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/noseleaves12. I go live almost every single day. Hope to see you there. All right, so let's go through these patch notes. Again, it was released on Friday, October 6th. We start out with, although not available in this patch, we're aiming to deliver the previously announced hybrid controls and goalie control updates in late October. We appreciate your patience surrounding these features and are working to get them into the game as soon as possible. This has been one of the biggest pieces of feedback from the community so far. Again, after the community playtest and the removal of the hybrid controls, it was very evident that the player base did not like that. So they are bringing them back. However, when they did announce them, they did say it was post-launch. Now we have sort of a time frame, as it looks like they will come in late October. So for anyone that is waiting for the hybrid controls, looks like we'll get that near the end of the month. We're also looking to make additional changes to the Lacrosse move in a future update based on your feedback. First point is adding in the chance of failure for the face button produced Lacrosse move by assigning a probability of dropping the puck based on the deke rating. And for skill stick players, allowing fewer error frames on the rotational skill stick input for lower rated players. So if you didn't know, the Lacrosse move in NHL 24 is now mapped to one button, which was obviously pretty controversial. However, all dekes in game are 100% successful regardless of the deke rating. However, the deke rating will determine how fast or slow the deke that you do will be pulled off. Now, obviously, with the Lacrosse move, because of where it happens and how easy it is if someone plays in front of the net, if you get someone with a high deke rating, it can be tough to defend. I do like, instead of it being 100% successful with lower rated players, there is now a chance of failure for this one. However, it is not coming in this patch. It will be coming in a future one. All right, into the patch notes. For gameplay, puck possession is tuned down 30%. We have lowered the impact that possessing the puck has in the offensive zone with regards to building sustained pressure. The value of possessing the puck has been lowered by 30%. Shots on net and big hits in the offensive zone are now strengthened as the best way to build sustained pressure. Note, this patch was planned to be reflected in a previous patch, but has been delayed until patch 1.1. So, after the community playtest, based on the feedback from the player base, it was far too easy, and it has been far too easy to activate the full pressure bar. Now, with the puck possession being tuned down to 30%, it is much more difficult to just skate around the offensive zone to fill up the meter. This now promotes shots on goal and an aggressive forecheck. And the one thing I will mention about my personal experience in game is that it has been a lot more eventful, whether offensively or defensively. There's a lot less just sitting back because you don't want to have it activated against you, and you are trying to keep the puck in the offensive zone to get that full pressure meter changed. Now, I understand that a lot of people might not like the full pressure system. Totally understandable. I'm curious to see with the tuned down puck possession if that helps things out quite a bit or not. Now, in franchise, they fixed a crash that happened when a generated player born after 2008 was edited, and they fixed an issue where a non-functional button would be displayed when a user tried to hire staff during the offseason. Franchise mode is in a tough spot. I don't know if you follow Tugi, my man. He is very vocal and critical of franchise mode, and as he should be, and it looks like it is in a pretty rough state from the AIGM logic standpoint, where they're not signing the correct amount of players and not making good lineup decisions, which really ruins the immersion of franchise mode. I do hope to see a fix to that, because I love doing a franchise mode series run at some point throughout the year, and I know that there is a diehard fan base for franchise mode specifically, and I really hope that that's addressed. Be a pro, it's still a pricey game of pond hockey. They fixed a rare issue on the loading screen when going into gameplay, and they fixed an issue where smoke effects could be seen during a coach conversation after losing a game in overtime. Very, very small bugs, but honestly, a kind of forgotten mode the past few years. World of Chel, they fixed a rare crash when customizing your casual player. They fixed an issue where users would sometimes lose the ability to back out of the World of Chel store, an issue where in one's eliminator, the mute functionality was not present in the post-game menu screens, and they fixed an issue if a user goalie quit during a drop-in match, the game would end for all players. That is huge, because obviously that really ruins a game if they're in drop-in, you load in, you're a very casual player just trying to get some games of World of Chel in, and the goalie leaves, ruins the match for everyone. They fixed a crash that would happen if a user created club and then entered free skate prior to club creation zone appearing, and they fixed a crash when entering into club customization or dressing room screen. They also fixed an issue where in some drop-in users weren't able to match up in World of Chel. So again, a lot of bug fixes. Hope to see some more stability from World of Chel. On to Hockey Ultimate Team, they fixed a crash that would happen when selecting squad battle teams. I hadn't experienced that myself. They fixed a rare crash that would happen at the end of Hut Rush games. Again, another forgotten mode in NHL. Hut Rush just seems to be on its way out. General fixes. Fixed an issue when reporting players for a terrorist threat, you would be taken to the main menu. The game will now report the player properly. How many of those are happening? Now, we also have an NHL 21 patch reminder. This was released earlier when the game launched with early access. Because there was a lot of confusion based on the feedback that I did in the interview I did with Mike Engelhart and all the changes coming to NHL at launch, they wanted to reiterate the things that are already in the game because a lot of people were convinced that they weren't. So they state, we'd also like to remind you of the changes that are already reflected in game based on your feedback from the community playtest. As we've noticed some confusion online on which gameplay changes have already made their way into the game versus what hasn't. So the sustained pressure system tuning, the decay rate of pressure meter increased by 100%. The new tuning sees the meter decay faster once the puck is cleared outside of the defensive zone by the defending team. What happened in the community playtest was you had to get into the offensive zone before your team would start to regain energy, which was brutal. It just led to being completely out of gas the entire time. Now, once you leave the offensive zone, you'll start to regain some energy, or defensive zone, apologies. This creates a more authentic feel to sustain pressure, as the offensive team must keep a consistent attack in the offensive zone in order to activate full pressure. Previously, the offensive team could attack, leave the zone, and then re-attack to slowly build the meter, which ultimately did not feel authentic to the sport. Full pressure, as a result, will be slightly tougher to trigger during period of play. That's a win for me. That's a win in my mind. The goalie fatigue system, another big issue in the community playtest. The goalies recover when puck exits defensive zone. This was big. So previously, goalies would only regenerate their energy during active play when the puck crossed over the opposing team's blue line, like I just mentioned. This resulted in the goalie remaining tired for too long and throwing too many desperation saves. We've changed this to now by having goalies start to recover immediately when the puck exits the defensive zone. This means more peaks and valleys when good goalie fatigue rather than consistent fatigue states. This is 100% already noticeable in game. If you play the community technical test, you could literally skate across the line, fire low far side with no one in front, and it would trigger this crazy desperation save. And that was because goalies weren't recovering after you had been in the offensive zone for a while. I haven't noticed nearly as many desperation saves, and to be honest, offensively, I've been robbed senseless by them working. So again, another interesting change to gameplay. We'll see how it shakes up once in Hockey Ultimate Team once overall start to climb, but the desperation saves have been tuned down quite a bit from the community playtest. The fatigue meter always visible. This one's pretty obvious. It clearly shows now in game. Goalie attributes have increased impact on drain and recovery. So we've increased the impact that a goalie's respective attributes have on both energy drain and recovery. This means breaking down a higher rated goalie will be more difficult as compared to a lower rated goalie, as they will recover at a slower. I would love if this alone let smaller goaltenders be a little bit more viable, but honestly, base Jacob Markstrom has still been, in my opinion, the best goalie since the launch of the game. So the biggest goalies just still seem to have the best way to stop the puck. Goalie more stable when rested. Goalies have been tuned to be more stable and positional when above 50% energy. This means that you will see fewer desperation saves overall when a goalie is in what is deemed a reasonably rested state, like I mentioned. Physics-based contact, man, this has been probably the loudest criticism from the player base so far. The new hitting is very tough to get used to. For anyone that doesn't know, essentially to lay a big hit now, you've got to do a pullback and push up like you're taking a slap shot, and the timing is really tough, and if you miss it, they make this kind of egregious animation and you're way out of position. It is going to be a pretty large adjustment from the player base. I have mentioned that I've been using total controls now for about 20 hours of gameplay. I just did it all throughout the moments. And while at the beginning, even the community technical test and the launch early access of 24, I really did not like it. I've been using SkillSync, obviously, for the last decade, and I really did not like it. I can say now, after 20 hours of playing the game, I am really enjoying total control, but I want to acknowledge it takes a long time to get used to and train your mind to actually be able to use it. So I can totally understand where the casual player is frustrated because the way that you've played the game for the last 15 years is now drastically different, and a lot of people don't want to have to spend time learning how to play the game all over again. So I totally understand that, but once you do get used to it, I think that you'll enjoy it a lot more than you do right now. The player size carries more impact on reverse hits. I haven't seen as many reverse hits. Again, I think this is an adjustment. They were overpowered at the community technical test, and I think we'll start to see them more as the game carries on in its life cycle, but now smaller players cannot do the reverse hit as well against bigger players. Performing a reverse hit results in some slowdown, so instead of wiping out their energy entirely, they can recover a little bit. Hip checks in low speed situations. I have noticed this, again, if you played the technical test, it was a disaster. You could basically just clip someone along the boards and they would go flying. It has been tuned down a lot more, going slower. I still think that the total control scheme the best part about it is the one button hip check, and once you learn to actually time them correctly, it's one of the most satisfying things you can do in HUD. The global lacrosse deke tuning, the effectiveness tied to the deke ability. This was what I mentioned earlier. The deke rating, once early access started, made the motion happen faster. So if you watched my moments video in my No Money Spent series, Zegras was skilled up. It's almost instant. Kind of as it should be because that's his ability. But if you do it with someone like Ryan Reeves, it'll still work, but it is so much slower. Very easy to defend it. Now there is a chance for complete failure of the move. So if you're doing it with Ryan Reeves, not only is it going to be very slow, but you might also lose the puck as well, which I think is the correct way to go about it. It is also going to put a bigger emphasis on having players that have a high deke rating. And the thing I enjoy about that is that there are so few things that attributes actually impact, and it's noticeable in Hockey Ultimate Team specifically. So now you might, have a tiebreaker between two cards you're trying and notice that one's deke rating is 10 points higher. If you are someone that can pull off the Michigan pretty easily, you might go for that player. And again, anytime that you can have an attribute impact the game a little bit more, I think just adds more interesting builds. X Factor tuning, they nerfed close quarters. They reduced the distance required to activate it. Essentially, in prior years, it was inside the face-off dots, which is a very large range. It also reduced the accuracy bonus by 50% on the gold version and 25 or 75% on the superstar ability. Close quarters is still one of the best abilities in the game. If you go for rebounds or you're in tight, anytime they catch a puck, they will get you their full shot and accuracy on it, and it still remains one of the best. They mentioned a lot about human goalies. I don't play human goalies, so I can't really touch on this, but the tethering issue has been pretty bad. I believe once the new hybrid and old goalie controls come into the game, we won't see a lot of people using the tethering system. The pocheck, they reverted the speed loss back to NHL 23 tuning, so when you hold down the pocheck, you really start to skate slower. I've actually kind of enjoyed the pocheck in online play. In moments, if you've been grinding moments, it's non-existent because it's on an arcade setting. Pochecking is completely useless. But in my 5 to 10 Rivals games so far, I have kind of enjoyed it a little bit, but we'll see once overall start to creep up. And then general gameplay tuning, the nets being knocked off and the glass breaking less. Again, if you play the community technical test, you're definitely noticing it less. So those are the patch notes for 1.1. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. They are live if you are watching this video. They are now in game. So the real biggest change is going to be the sustained pressure now taking 30% of a reduction when just skating around with the puck, which is a W in my opinion. We're early on. We'll see how the gameplay improves over the course of the year. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.